What is the heaviest burden a person can carry? Is it wasted potential or the painful realization that our dreams were never truly ours? This haunting question lies at the heart of Nuri Bilge Ceylan's masterpiece, Distant, a film that stares into the quiet corners of life where loneliness lingers, where regret grows heavy, and where the tragedy of unrealized dreams slowly suffocates the human spirit. Today, we dive deep into how this film captures not just characters, but the very essence of what it means to live with distance from others, from our past, and from ourselves. At the heart of Distant lie two men who seem to live in the same apartment, but inhabit entirely different worlds. Mahmoud, a middle-aged photographer, embodies the fatigue of modern urban life. His days are filled with routine, his nights with cigarettes and flickering television screens. Surrounded by the tools of his trade, cameras, books, film reels, he should be an artist, a creator. Yet the fire that once fueled him has dimmed into ashes. His art no longer seeks truth, it seeks distraction. Mahmoud hides from the emptiness, not by confronting it, but by drowning it in routine. And then comes Yusuf, young, unemployed, fresh from a rural village. His suitcase is light, but the weight of his failed dreams is heavy. Yusuf once imagined a future filled with work, purpose, maybe even love. Instead, he finds himself drifting into Istanbul like a stranger. The city does not welcome him, it swallows him. Placed under the same roof, their lives should intersect, but they never truly connect. Their conversations are brief, awkward, and filled with silences. Mahmoud looks at Yusuf and sees his own past, the naive ambition he has long since buried. Yusuf looks at Mahmoud and sees his own possible future, lonely, disillusioned, trapped in habits that suffocate. The beauty of Ceylan's direction lies in how he shows this distance without words. A cigarette burning in the dark, the cold light of a television screen illuminating tired eyes, a man staring out of a window as if waiting for life to knock on the glass. The characters of Distant are not simply individuals, they are mirrors. Mahmoud reflects the tragedy of lost potential. Yusuf reflects the tragedy of unrealized beginnings. And between them, in the silence, lies the central theme of the film. Loneliness is not just the absence of people, it is the absence of connection. The title of the film, Distant, is not just a description, it is the essence of the story. Distance surrounds every frame. The distance between the city and the village, the distance between ambition and reality, the distance between two men who share a home but not a life. Istanbul, in Ceylan's lens, is not a city of opportunity. It is a frozen labyrinth. Snow falls over its streets, muting sound, slowing movement, isolating souls. The ships in the harbor, shrouded in fog, do not look like vessels of travel. They look stranded, as if even the sea has lost its direction. Nature, too, becomes distant. When Mahmoud and Yusuf wander outside, the landscapes stretch endlessly, beautiful yet cold, indifferent to human struggle. Wide shots emphasize their smallness, their fragility against a world that does not care. The universe, it seems, is not hostile. It is simply absent. But the greatest distance is not external, it is internal. Mahmoud has distanced himself from his own passion. Once a photographer with dreams of art, he now takes commercial jobs that drain his soul. His camera no longer reveals truth, it conceals emptiness. Yusuf, meanwhile, distances himself from responsibility. He drifts through the city without purpose, hoping opportunity will appear at his door. His silence is not contemplative, it is avoidance. Together, they embody two forms of distance. Mahmoud, the distance of one who has seen too much. Yusuf, the distance of one who has not yet begun. And in the cold silence between them, we realize that distance is not always measured in miles. It is measured in the space between two people sitting side by side, unable to speak. It is measured in the gap between who we are and who we once wanted to be. In Distant, silence is not a gap to be filled. It is the film's most powerful language. We live in a world addicted to noise, traffic, conversations, endless notifications, the constant hum of background music. Silence, in real life, is often treated as awkward, something to avoid. But Nuri Bilge Ceylan flips this cultural instinct upside down. In his cinema, silence is not an absence, it is presence, a heavy, undeniable presence that forces us to confront the things words can never say. When Mahmoud and Yusuf share the same room, the air feels thick with everything left unsaid. The scrape of a chair, the shuffle of feet, the faint static of the television, all of these sounds normally drowned out by dialogue become deafening. The silence between them is louder than speech. It is a silence made of disappointment, of misunderstanding, of two people trapped in the same physical space but separated by worlds of experience. Ceylan masterfully uses silence to reflect alienation. These are not characters who lack thoughts or feelings, on the contrary, they are overflowing with them, but silence reveals the gap between interior and exterior, between what is felt and what is expressed. In this sense, silence becomes philosophical. It shows us the limits of language itself. Thinkers like Heidegger once suggested that silence is not a failure of communication, but its purest form. To fall silent is to confront the truth that cannot be reduced to words. In Distant, silence embodies exactly this idea. Mahmoud cannot tell Yusuf that he sees his own wasted youth in him. Yusuf cannot confess that he fears becoming Mahmoud. Instead, they smoke, they stare, they sit, and we, the audience, feel the tension of everything unsaid pressing down on us. Ceylan also aligns with a tradition of modernist art that saw silence as revelation. Samuel Beckett's theater theater is filled with pauses that stretch beyond comfort. Ingmar Bergman's films let silence expose the fractures between lovers and families. In the same way, silences are not voids, they are mirrors. They reflect the walls we build, the emotions we bury, the truths we deny. And there is another layer, silence as resistance. In a society that demands productivity, performance, constant expression, choosing silence can itself be a statement. Mahmut, tired of a world that no longer inspires him, retreats into silence. Yusuf, lost in a city that refuses to see him, answers it with silence of his own. Their silence is not harmonious, it is dissonant, but it speaks volumes about their inner battles. For us as viewers, these silences are unsettling. We are used to films explaining everything, guiding us with dialogue. Distant denies us that comfort. It asks us to sit in the quiet, to hear the weight of loneliness, to witness how human beings can sit an arm's length apart and still remain galaxies away from one another. This is why Distant feels so real, because in life, silence is often the most honest dialogue we have. We all remember those moments, sitting across from a friend, a lover, or even a stranger, when the words refuse to come. Sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of shame, sometimes out of sheer exhaustion. Seylan captures this truth with brutal clarity. His silences do not simply decorate the film, they are the distance, the tension, the unbridgeable gap. And in the end, we realize something haunting. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is the evidence of everything we cannot say. In Distant, time does not pass. It lingers. It hangs heavy in the air, like smoke that refuses to clear. Seylan strips away the illusion of cinematic time. In most films, time is movement, fast cuts, constant action, the sense that something is always happening. But here, time is closer to real life. Long takes, slow pacing, repetitive routines. Time does not carry the characters forward. It traps them. Mahmut's days are defined by ritual. Wake up, smoke, pour tea, stare at the television, flip through channels, smoke again. His life is measured not in moments of meaning, but in repetitions of survival. He has no urgent deadlines, no pressing projects, only a monotonous cycle that numbs him day after day. His art, once alive, now reduced to hollow habit. His photographs do not inspire, they distract him from the emptiness. Yusuf's time is different, yet equally suffocating. He drifts through the city with no clear purpose. His routines are those of waiting for work, waiting for acceptance, waiting for something to break the silence of his existence. Unlike Mahmut, he has not yet surrendered fully to routine, but he is learning the same rhythm of passivity, the same inertia. Together, their lives reflect two faces of wasted time. Mahmut, the tragedy of repetition without growth. Yusuf, the tragedy of delay without beginning. He does not cut away when the cigarette smoke curls slowly into the air. He does not rush past the emptiness of a man staring blankly at a wall. Instead, he makes us sit with it, to feel how oppressive time can be when it no longer holds promise. Philosophers have long debated the nature of time. For Augustine, time was memory and anticipation, the stretch between past and future. For Heidegger, time was existence itself, our being towards death. But in Distant, time is stripped of transcendence. It becomes a heavy blanket, suffocating rather than liberating. What makes this even more haunting is that time here is not dramatic, it is ordinary. There are no climaxes, no sudden revelations, just the slow erosion of possibility. The quiet realization that days can pass, weeks can vanish, and nothing will change. And isn't that the greatest fear of all? Not death, but the idea of living endlessly in cycles that strip life of meaning. In Distant, time is not our ally, it is our silent captor. Modern life promises connection. Cities are crowded. Technology links us across continents. Communication is faster than ever. And yet, Distant reveals the great paradox of our age. The more connected we are, the more alienated we feel. Mahmut lives in Istanbul, one of the largest and busiest cities in the world. But in Seylan's camera, it is not vibrant, it is suffocating. Snow-covered streets look deserted. Factories loom like monuments to emptiness, and the very density of the city amplifies Mahmut's solitude. He is surrounded by millions, yet he might as well be on a deserted island. Alienation here is not just social, it is existential. Mahmut is alienated from his work, which no longer inspires him, from his relationships, which lack intimacy, from himself as he watches his passions fade into routine. Even his interactions with Yusuf reveal a deeper isolation. Mahmut does not truly see him, nor allow himself to be seen. Yusuf, on the other hand, embodies a different kind of alienation, cultural and economic. Coming from a rural background, he does not belong in the rhythms of the city. He walks its streets like an intruder, unwelcome and invisible. His dreams collapse under the weight of a society that has no place for him. Together, they represent two faces of alienation in the modern world. Mahmut, alienated by abundance, numbed by too many choices that lead nowhere. Yusuf, alienated by scarcity, trapped in a system that denies him opportunity. Philosophers from Marx to Sartre spoke of alienation as the defining condition of modernity. Marx saw it in the worker separated from his labor. Sartre saw it in the individual's unbearable freedom, condemned to choose without guidance. In Distant, Ceylon shows alienation not as an abstract theory, but as lived reality. We see it in the empty gaze of Mahmoud, in Yusuf's hesitant footsteps, in the cold silence of their shared apartment. And perhaps the most haunting insight of the film is this: alienation is not solved by more people, more noise, more technology. It lingers even in crowded rooms, even in shared spaces, even in supposed relationships. Alienation is the distance that cannot be bridged by words or proximity. In a way, Distant asks us an uncomfortable question. Is this not our own condition too? Surrounded by screens, always online, always in contact, yet more disconnected than ever before. At its core, Distant is not simply a film about two men. It is a meditation on what it means to live at a distance from others, from society, and most painfully, from ourselves. Distance, in Salon's vision, is not just physical, it is existential. Mahmoud and Yusuf sit in the same apartment, yet they may as well live on different planets. Their words rarely touch, their gazes often avoid. The space between them becomes a metaphor for the human condition, the tragedy that we can share time and space, yet fail to truly connect. Philosophically, this distance resonates with Kierkegaard's despair, the recognition that we are separated from our true selves, unable to live authentically. It also echoes Sartre's concept of bad faith, where we hide behind roles, routines, and false identities to avoid the responsibility of freedom. Mahmoud embodies this through his retreat into routine, while Yusuf drifts in denial of responsibility. Distance is also linked to Heidegger's idea of unhomeliness. To be human is to feel estranged in the very world we inhabit, to sense that home is never truly home. Mahmoud's apartment, filled with books, cameras, and artifacts of culture, should be a sanctuary. Instead, it feels cold, impersonal, suffocating. Yusuf, who comes seeking shelter, finds not warmth but alienation. Home itself becomes foreign. What makes Distant haunting is that this distance is not dramatic or extraordinary, it is ordinary. There is no great betrayal, no violent rupture, no sudden revelation, just the slow erosion of closeness, the quiet drift into isolation. And isn't that what real life often feels like? Not a sudden break, but a gradual fading away. The philosophy of distance suggests a painful truth, that connection is fragile, and disconnection is the default. That loneliness does not always come from being alone, but from being unseen, unheard, and unrecognized, even in the presence of others. Yet there is also an invitation here, to notice the silences, to question our routines, to resist the drift of distance, because what Ceylon reveals is not only despair, but also awareness. Awareness that distance defines us, but also that recognizing it is the first step toward bridging it. You've been watching Lumora Mind, a channel where philosophy meets cinema, where psychology meets art, and where every story reveals something hidden about the human condition. Ceylon's Distant is more than a film. It is a mirror. It shows us how silence can speak louder than words, how time can become a prison, how alienation can live even in crowded cities, and how distance is not measured in miles, but in the space between souls. If this journey made you reflect, if it stirred something inside you, then I invite you to stay with us. Because here on Lumora Mind, we continue to explore the ideas, the films, and the philosophies that shape our lives. Thank you for watching, and remember, every view, every comment, every subscription helps us bring more of these stories to light. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to Lumora Mind, and let's keep discovering the hidden truths of philosophy, art, and life together.